When Darius Hamilton walked into the luxury car showroom in a hoodie and sneakers, the racist sales manager took one look and turned away. "Those cars aren't for you," Brad said dismissively. What Brad didn't know, Darius wasn't there to buy a car. He owned the entire dealership chain, and Brad's dismissive attitude just cost him his career. Darius Hamilton had spent 15 years building Hamilton Automotive Group from a single used car lot into a regional luxury dealership empire. At 41, he owned 12 dealerships across 3 states, specializing in high-end European brands: Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Porsche. His company generated over $400 million in annual revenue, and his reputation in the automotive industry was impeccable. But success hadn't changed Darius's style. He still wore his favorite college hoodie on weekends. He still drove his old Nissan pickup truck when he wasn't testing inventory. And he still believed that the best way to understand his business was to walk through his dealerships unannounced, dressed like a regular customer, and see how his staff treated people when they thought no one important was watching. On a Saturday morning in late September, Darius pulled into the parking lot of Hamilton Luxury Motors in Charlotte, North Carolina, one of his flagship locations. He was wearing a gray hoodie, faded jeans, and white sneakers. He hadn't shaved in a few days. To anyone who didn't know better, he looked like a guy who'd wandered in off the street, maybe curious about cars he couldn't afford. The showroom was pristine. Gleaming floors, spotless vehicles positioned under perfect lighting. A sleek Mercedes S-Class sat in the center, its midnight blue paint shimmering. On the far wall, a red Porsche 911. Turbo commanded attention. Near the windows, a white BMW M8 competition gleamed under the morning sun. The air smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne. 3 salespeople stood near the coffee station, chatting and laughing. 2 men, 1 woman, all white, all dressed in sharp business attire, pressed shirts, tailored slacks, polished shoes. They glanced at Darius when he walked in, and he saw it immediately. The quick scan, the dismissive look, the subtle turning away. No one approached him. Darius moved slowly through the showroom, running his hand along the hood of the S-Class. He peered through the windows, checking the interior. The leather seats were cream-colored, pristine. The dashboard glowed with digital displays. Still, no one came over. The salespeople continued their conversation, occasionally glancing in his direction but making no move to engage. He walked to the BMW next, admiring the carbon fiber accents and the aggressive stance. He could hear fragments of the salespeople's conversation, something about a golf outing, weekend plans, a big commission check one of them had just earned. They were comfortable, relaxed, completely unconcerned with the potential customer standing 15 feet away. After about 5 minutes, Darius walked toward the Porsche. He stood in front of it, arms crossed, studying the lines of the car. The red paint was flawless, the curves aggressive yet elegant. This was a $250,000 machine, and it showed. That's when one of the salesmen finally approached, but not to help. Brad Morrison was the sales manager. Mid-40s, sandy blonde hair styled with too much gel, wearing a blue blazer with the dealership logo embroidered on the pocket. He walked over with his hands in his pockets, his expression somewhere between bored and annoyed. "Can I help you?" Brad asked. His tone making it clear he didn't actually want to help. Darius turned and smiled. "Yeah, I'm interested in the 911. Beautiful car." Brad glanced at the Porsche, then back at Darius. "It's a Turbo S. $230,000. The way he said it, emphasizing the price, was deliberate. A test. A way of saying, "Can you even afford to be here?" Darius didn't flinch. "I'd like to take it for a test drive." Brad's eyebrows raised slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, just walked in." "We don't typically do test drives without an appointment," Brad said, his tone cooling further, "especially on high-end inventory like this." Darius nodded slowly. "I understand, but I'm a serious buyer. I've owned several Porsches before." Brad looked him up and down. The hoodie, the sneakers, the casual demeanor, his skepticism was written all over his face. "What do you drive now?" "A Nissan?" Brad smirked. Right. Well, the Turbo S is a pretty big jump from a Nissan. This isn't exactly a starter car. Darius kept his voice calm. I'm aware. That's why I want to test drive it. Brad crossed his arms. Look, man, I'm not trying to be difficult, but these cars aren't for everyone. If you're just here to look around, that's fine. But test drives are for qualified buyers. Qualified? Darius repeated. People who can actually afford the car, Brad said bluntly. We get tire kickers all the time, people who want to take a $200,000 car for a joyride and waste our time. No offense, but based on what you're wearing and what you're driving, I don't think this is in your budget. The other two salespeople had stopped talking now. They were watching, pretending not to listen but clearly tuned in to the conversation. One of them, a younger man with slicked back hair, smirked slightly. Darius took a slow breath. He'd dealt with this before, many times, but it never stopped being exhausting. So, you're refusing to let me test drive the car? I'm saying you need to make an appointment and come back with proof of funds, Brad replied. That's standard policy. Is it? Darius asked. Because I've been standing here for 10 minutes and I've watched you let two other customers walk around without asking them for proof of funds. Brad's jaw tightened. Those were different situations. How? They looked like serious buyers. Darius let the words hang in the air. The implication was clear. They were white. You're not. I see, Darius said quietly. So, you're not going to help me? Brad shrugged. Like I said, make an appointment. Bring your financial documents. Then we can talk. Darius nodded once. All right. Let me speak to your general manager. Brad's expression shifted slightly, just a flicker of concern. He's busy. I'll wait. Brad hesitated, clearly uncomfortable now. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. A minute passed. Then another Darius stood calmly, hands in his pockets, watching the showroom. A middle-aged white couple walked in, and immediately one of the other salespeople rushed over, all smiles and enthusiasm. They were offered coffee, asked about their needs, treated like royalty. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. Finally, a door near the back of the showroom opened, and a man in his 50s emerged, Robert Chandler, the general manager. He was tall, balding, wearing a gray suit that fit perfectly. He walked over with a practiced smile, clearly expecting to smooth over a minor complaint. Good morning, Robert said, extending his hand. I'm Robert Chandler, general manager. I understand there's an issue? Darius shook his hand. Not an issue, just a question. I asked to test drive the 911, and your sales manager here told me I'm not qualified. Robert glanced at Brad, then back at Darius. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Darius interrupted gently. He looked at what I'm wearing, assumed I couldn't afford the car, and refused a service. I'd like to know if that's dealership policy. Robert's smile faltered. Of course not. We welcome all customers. Do you? Darius asked. Because your sales manager just told me I don't look like a serious buyer. What do you think he meant by that? Robert's face flushed. He shot Brad a sharp look. Brad, is that true? Brad stammered. I just said he needed to make an appointment. That's not what you said, Darius corrected calmly. You said the cars aren't for everyone. You said I needed to prove I could afford them. You didn't ask those other customers for proof. Robert looked between them, the situation crystallizing in his mind. Brad, step back for a moment. Brad retreated, his face red with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Robert turned back to Darius, his professional mask slipping slightly. Sir, I apologize for any confusion. We'd be happy to arrange a test drive. I don't want a test drive anymore, Darius said calmly. I want to know who owns this dealership. Robert blinked. I'm sorry? Who owns Hamilton Luxury Motors? Robert looked confused. It's part of Hamilton Automotive Group. Why? Darius reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Robert. Robert read it. His face went white. The silence that followed was suffocating. Brad's eyes went wide. The other salespeople froze mid-conversation. Robert's hand trembled slightly as he held the card. You're Darius Hamilton? Robert whispered. I am, Darius said. And this is my dealership. I own this building. I own every car in this showroom. And I just watched your sales manager profile and refuse service to a customer, who happens to be me, based on how I look." Brad's face drained of color. "I didn't know." "That's the problem," Darius said, his voice calm but firm. "You didn't know who I was. But even if I wasn't the owner, what you did was wrong. You judged me based on my clothes and my skin color. You assumed I couldn't afford to be here. And you made that decision in about 10 seconds. Robert looked like he might be sick. "Mr. Hamilton, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable." Darius raised a hand. "Robert, I'm not angry at you. You weren't here. But I need to know, has this happened before? Gee." Robert hesitated, his mind clearly racing through past complaints, comments he might have dismissed. I don't know." "Then we're going to find out." Darius turned to Brad. "How long have you been working here?" Brad's voice shook. 3 years. "And in those 3 years, how many black customers have you helped?" Brad didn't answer. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. "How many?" Darius repeated, his tone still calm but unmistakably serious. I don't keep track." "I do," Darius said. He pulled out his phone and opened a file. "I reviewed your sales records last month as part of a routine audit. You've sold 220 cars in the last year. Guess how many went to black customers?" Brad's silence was answer enough. The other salespeople had gone completely still, their faces pale. 4, Darius said. "Less than 2%. In a city where black residents make up 35% of the population. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern." Robert stepped forward, his voice desperate now. "Mr. Hamilton, I didn't realize—" "I know you didn't," Darius said. "That's why I'm here. I walk through my dealerships twice a year dressed like this to see how customers are treated when they don't look wealthy. And what I just experienced? Unacceptable." He looked at Brad. "You're fired, effective immediately." Brad's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, might defend himself. But the look on Darius's face, calm, resolute, unmovable, stopped him. "Pack your things and leave," Darius continued. "HR will contact you about your final paycheck." Brad's face crumpled. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the back office, his shoulders slumped. "Robert," Darius continued, "I want a full review of sales practices at this location. I want to see hiring records, customer complaints, and demographic breakdowns of who gets helped and who gets ignored. And I want mandatory training for every employee on bias and customer service." Robert nodded quickly. "Absolutely. I'll get started today." Darius turned to the other 2 salespeople who'd been watching in stunned silence. "If either of you have been doing the same thing Brad's been doing, ignoring customers based on how they look, you should start looking for new jobs, because I'm going to find out, and I won't tolerate it." They both nodded, too shocked to speak. Darius walked toward the exit, then paused. "Robert, one more thing. I want you to personally reach out to every black customer who's walked through those doors in the last year and left without buying. Ask them why. And if they say they were ignored or treated poorly, I want you to apologize and offer them a discount on their next purchase." "Yes, sir," Robert said. "And one more thing," Darius added, his voice softer now. "I want you to hire a diversity consultant. Not just for this location, for all 12 dealerships, because this isn't just about Brad. This is about a culture that allowed Brad to think what he was doing was okay." Robert nodded. "I understand." Darius left the showroom, climbed into his old Nissan truck, and drove away. In his rearview mirror, he could see Robert standing in the doorway, phone already pressed to his ear, no doubt making the calls Darius had demanded. Over the next 3 months, Hamilton Automotive Group implemented sweeping changes across all 12 locations. Mandatory bias training. Mystery shopper programs. Third-party audits of sales practices, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Some employees embraced the changes, others left. But slowly, the culture shifted. Sales to Black and Hispanic customers increased by 40%. Customer satisfaction scores rose, and complaints about discriminatory treatment dropped to nearly zero. Brad Morrison never worked in car sales again. His termination became a case study in the company's training program, a reminder of what happens when assumptions replace service. Robert Chandler, to his credit, didn't just implement the changes, he led them. He hired a diverse sales team, created mentorship programs, and personally oversaw customer feedback reviews. Within 6 months, the Charlotte location went from one of the worst-performing dealerships in terms of diversity metrics to one of the best. And Darius? He kept walking through his dealerships in hoodies and sneakers, because he knew that the moment he stopped checking, the old habits would creep back in. 6 months later, Darius was back at the Charlotte dealership, this time in a suit, meeting with the leadership team. As he walked through the showroom, he noticed something different. A young black couple stood near the same Porsche 911 he'd been refused. A salesperson, a young black woman named Keisha, who'd been hired as part of the new diversity push, was patiently answering their questions, offering a test drive, treating them with respect. Darius stopped and watched for a moment. The couple smiled. They asked about financing options. Keisha pulled up numbers on her tablet, explaining terms clearly and without condescension. They shook hands. They scheduled the test drive for that afternoon. That was the victory. Not the firing, not the policies, but this. A young couple walking into a dealership and being treated like they belonged. Darius caught Keisha's eye as the couple walked toward the finance office. She smiled, gave him a small nod of recognition. She knew who he was now. Everyone did after that day, but, more importantly, she knew what he stood for. As Darius left the dealership that day, he thought about all the black customers who'd walked through those doors over the years and been turned away. All the assumptions made. All the sales lost. All the dignity denied. He couldn't change the past, but he could change the future. And that was enough. Because respect shouldn't depend on what you're wearing, and service shouldn't require proving you're worthy. If this story resonated with you, remember, bias in retail isn't just rude, it's a business failure. Every customer ignored is revenue lost. Every assumption made is trust broken. But change is possible when people in power refuse to accept it. Share this story. Subscribe for more moments that challenge us to see people, not stereotypes. And if you've ever been judged while shopping, know that you deserved better. And one day, you might just own the whole damn dealership.